Today seems to be the morning of mitral stenosis. This is it is not a very unusual combination of the common diseases, but I think the mystery of the missing disease will continue for decades, and I think this cannot be created uh, in our lifetime. We cannot connect it or so. Now, this was a 36-year-old female, 2005, shortness of breath, diagnosed as severe mitral stenosis. In 2006, she had a BMV in a leading cardiac center. Then she was better symptomatically. In 2011, because of a recurrence of symptoms, she again a repeat BMV was done at another leading cardiac center. Now, at one stage in the last 1 or 2 years, a 3D TE was done. And as you know, the 3D TE is also done in a sort of a big centers. And there are various findings, but the two main findings were a severe mitral stenosis, with an area of about zero point 0.8 centimeters square, and there was no other significant abnormality reported in the 3D TE. Then the patient, the slide is not moving. I don't know why. Yeah. So the shortness of breath persisted, and the main thing was there was a murmur of mitral stenosis, and a systolic murmur was heard. And this before the echo was thought to be because of a mitral regurgitation, as she was already on digoxin, furosemide, and other things also. So we repeated an echo and a TEE. Now in the ECG, you see there is no LVH, there is a LA overload, and there is an initial R wave in V1. Now, when we did the echo, the first thing which struck us was that there was a massive hypertrophy of the interventricular septum, and this was almost about 20 millimeters of mercury, 20 millimeters, and there was an asymmetrical septal hypertrophy. Then there were signs of mitral stenosis, and we can see a turbulence into the LVOT together with a doming. Again, you see in the next one, there was no SAM of anterior mitral leaflet, and there was only a large IVS hypertrophy and normal motion of the mitral wall, except the doming and then increased left atrial dimensions. Then a aortic showed an intermittent mid-systolic closure of the aortic walls and in significantly increased LA enlargement. So this was also an important finding. The mitral wall area was about zero point 0.8 centimeters square. Now, when we went to the apical three-chamber view, you see that there is a anterior mitral leaflet which is completely abutting against the interventricular septum. So, was this causing an LVOT obstruction or what? In diastole, which was not there, you can see the anterior mitral leaflet and the interventricular septum. It was not and you can see a turbulence present into the LVOT. So, but this was not a diastolic phenomena because when we took an LVOT gradient, it was mainly in mid to late systole, and the gradient was about 113. And this gradient could have been affected by associated mitral stenosis, diuretics, possibly digoxin, and a small LV volume. So this value could have been more or so. So the first impression that there was a diastolic obliteration of the LVOT was removed by the presence of this a late systolic gradient in the LVOT. Then a T was done mainly to see for a again a for a subaortic membrane which can mimic SCM. Then the LVOT, and again you see there's a marked thickening of the interventricular septum, and this is the anterior mitral leaflet, which no doming, but coming up almost up to the LVOT. So the management we advised in those patients that this patient was a mitral wall replacement and septal myomectomy. But the limitation was, and surprisingly, Whenever you do a BMV, you do a complete evaluation of the person, both echo and clinically, and none of these findings were diagnosed there. But at that time, there was a limitation of its financial implications, and we were passing through a phase of a COVID epidemic. So the patient could not go to her home state, could not arrange finances, and one morning she developed an acute pulmonary edema from where she could not be resuscitated. So some of the unanswered questions in this case was, what was the mechanism of LVOT obstruction? Systolic, diastolic, how the diagnosis was missed so many times. I think this mystery will always remain, and how this diagnosis was done. Regarding the mechanism, one of the largest study we could get, well, it is such a uncommon condition that in a Mayo Clinic over a period of 22 years, they could report only 12 cases of a mitral stenosis and HOCM, but that too, their patient's age was about 70 plus minus 7 years. So this was most likely non-traumatic and most of it degenerative. So because of age and rarity of the rheumatic fever, it was a degenerative, but this was a combination only reported in 12 patients. And the mechanism they postulated was four. Number one, a systolic anterior motion of the anterior mitral leaflet, which was not present in our case. Number two, a restricted motion of the mitral leaflet because of stenosis, and a hook and a sham only of the leaflet tips, which was not present in our case. Then a hypertrophy of the septum uh, encroaching on the LVOT, which could be a remote possibility, but not there because it was more uniform. And lastly, a calcified mitral valve encroaching on the LVOT. So that all these possibilities were not present in our case. So what would be the cause of an LVOT obstruction or a gradient? So we again went frame by frame, and here you see what we see, that it is not the mitral valve, it is the hypertrophic papillary muscle which is abutting against the interventricular septum. So do you see the papillary muscle, not at the mitral valve level? And then when we saw the turbulence, we see the turbulence also starting at the level of the papillary muscle and not much below. This will be much better seen again here. Now here you see, although the anterior mitral leaflet is coming up to this place, but you see it is the papillary muscle which is producing this LVOT obstruction by 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 abutting against the interventricular septum, which can be seen in this view, which is much better. And the same thing was seen in a parasternal long axis view, that you see this is the papillary muscle level, which is producing an LVOT obstruction, and not by the usual mechanisms which have been reported in the literature. And during diastole, you see this is red dot in diastole, there is no turbulence in the LVOT. So the diagnosis was mitral stenosis plus HOCM, and one of the most unusual mechanism of LVOT obstruction was present in this case, which is normally not so well seen reported in the literature. And lastly, when do you suspect this combination? Because it can occur anytime. When to suspect? Awareness of the condition, signs of mitral stenosis, LV type of apex beat, ejection systolic murmur at the left mid-sternal border, and ECG signs of LVH, which unfortunately were not present in our case. So lastly, the take-home message is, do not be biased by a previous echo findings. Avoid a tunnel vision. If one would have noted these findings about 10 years back, possibly a precious life could have been saved, which was not possible in this case. Thank you very much.